Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
Thriving comes from knowing that how you treat your body, what you put inside of your body, gives you the energy and enthusiasm to live a much more productive, interesting, adventurous life.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we focus on human connection and what brings us together. I'm Moshe Popack, and today, personal fitness strategies from the master. My guest is an absolute legend in the personal fitness industry. In fact, he just might be the most recognizable name in the history of personal fitness, the great Tony Horton. Tony is the creator of the best-selling fitness series, P90X, which revolutionized how people work out from home. In fact, his fitness programs have amassed over $500 million in sales. He's also a world-class motivational speaker and the best-selling author of multiple books. Today, he'll tell us about his latest workout program, The Power of Four, his latest book, The Big Picture, and provide insight about how you can get in the best shape of your life. First, a quick reminder that if you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at @Popack. Now, here's my conversation with fitness legend Tony Horton. Enjoy. Welcome, Tony, to the Common Denominator podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, man, pleasure. I'm fired up.
So just before the show, I'm looking at you, and people can see you on YouTube or, get a picture of you. Literally, you look half your age. And when we were talking about before, ticking the boxes. What's that like high level for you personally? What is that? What are the major things that you think about when it comes to lifestyle for yourself?
Well, there are the obvious ones. There's the nutrition, there's the exercise, there's the supplementation, and there's the mindfulness component. I have a new program called The Power of Four, and it's basically based on those four legs, right? So that's it. Then I get into the weeds a little bit when it comes to my hydration, when it comes to how and where I sleep, I all the way down to the mattress and the sheets and the pillows and whatever sound is in my. So I get I mouth tape now. Like every time I read James Nestor's book Breath, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start this silly thing practice. I've been doing it for 2 years. You know what I mean? Anything that will maximize the quality of my life. So it comes down to dealing with my stress, training, to the absolute limits, but also making sure that I have a really solid recovery thing. I have, regular stretching, regular foam rolling, infrared saunas, cold, showers and plunges. I was up at Gabby Reese's and Laird Hamilton's a couple of weeks ago. Name dropper. Anyway, and I was up there, in the sauna and in the bath and swimming underwater with weights, getting way outside of my comfort zone. And every time I do that, I learn something, and I always take something from it and I try to apply it to my life. I wrote a book about it, right? Like, here are all the things you need to do to sort of get to where I am. And, this comes from a C- student with a speech impediment who is the laziest son of a gun you ever met in your life. Procrastination was awesome. But now I can't afford to do any of that anymore because the outcome was pretty horrible. And then now, this regular behavior is a priority. It's a purpose, a plan, a priority, and surrounding myself with badasses. And that subscription seems to be working.
So let's go back, let's go back to the origin. I guess you always explain yourself as a 98-pound weakling. So what's the scenario? What was like I always ask like the rock bottom or the moment where you're like, you know what, I'm going to do something different. And what was that journey like initially?
Well, it was rough when I was a kid. We moved 6 times, before 5th grade. So new teachers, new neighborhood, new schools, new friends, new enemies, all that every time I moved. We lived in one place for 9 months. The next one was a year and a half. So that wasn't easy. My father was in the Army. He was a tank commander in the Army. So I was an Army brat. And then after he got out of the military, he had other businesses where he got a promotion and he would go to another place. So, and the speech impediment thing was something called cluttering, which was pretty brutal. I didn't really realize what it was until I was later, because I grew up in the 60s and everybody just thought, oh, the kid's got issues, whatever. He'll figure it out on his own. But yeah, that took a lot of trials and tribulations and efforts and things. I became a young actor, and I did stand-up comedy, and I was a street performer too early on. And those were the things that kind of got me outside of my comfort zone and helped me get away from this scared to death modality that I was in most of the time in my, before in my tweens and teens and a little bit before that. And as I got into my 20s, I came out to California in 1980 on a summer vacation, and I'm still on it. And I could reinvent myself here because nobody knew who I was. And at that point, my speech issues were kind of cleared up a little bit. But I was broke. I came out here with $400. Well, I got to Boulder, Colorado with $400, and then I had to break out the mime and the thing, and then make about $125 on a Saturday so I can get from Boulder to Huntington Beach, California. And it was all hand to mouth, and we were sleeping on my buddy's sister's living room floor for the summer, and then I won a talent show. And the second place guy in the talent show was so sympathetic to my story that he gave me his prize money too. Yeah. So he was a big real estate big deal, down in Orange County. So wow. I think I had like $1,500, which was all the money in the world because I came out with 4. So, I had the deposit and we had no furniture. We were sleeping on the floor in our apartment. We were living in Hermosa Beach. And then I really got caught up in the health world. It wasn't, back on the East Coast, you exercise because you were on a team. So you're trying to become a better baseball player, basketball, football, tennis, whatever it was. Out here, it was just like, gyms were everywhere. And a lot of women were going to the gyms, and I was interested in that. So, you go to bars and meet gals and whatever. But I was really interested in the whole thing. It was a sort of a twofer for me. And I took a weightlifting course in college, and I did pretty well there. My GPA went up, and I kind of remembered, oh, yeah, that was good for me. I want to get back in that flow again. That was all before training the celebrities and getting on the TV and starting my acting career.
Yeah. So I think, who was, I know it was Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, the list goes on and on of celebrities that you've trained. What was that first, celebrity? How did you land that first celebrity and begin that journey? Everybody, I always like to understand the back of the house, how that actually happened.
Well, keep in mind, I was exercising without ever thinking or wanting to train anybody. That was never on the list. But I had a job. One of my 45 jobs when I was, trying to make it was a runner over at 20th Century Fox for Julia Phillips. And she and her husband produced Close Encounters of the Third Kind, The Taxi Driver, and The Sting. And, she was crazy. But, it was a gig, and it wasn't having to wait tables anymore, do mime at the pier. And they let me go on auditions periodically. So it was super stressful. And the guy that she was working with at that time, his name was Harlan Goodman, who was pretty well known in the music industry, but he wanted to start making movies with Julia. And I was their guy. I was feeding the cat and folding the towels and delivering the scripts and making the coffee and doing whatever a PA or production assistant would do. And I did that for a while, and it was great, and then eventually they couldn't make a movie. And so he left, and I thought, man, I got fired every Friday and rehired every Sunday night just because whatever, I forgot to change a light bulb or something. It was pretty stressful. And then prior to all that, I started training Harlan because he was noticing that I was changing, that I was getting fitter and stronger and a little bulkier, throughout the course of working there the last year. Because my agent said, hey, man, you're kind of scrawny and you're kind of pudgy, and that's not a good combination if you want to work as an actor. So he noticed that. So we started training in a buddy's garage, the two of us in the morning before we both went to work for Julia. And he lost about 45 pounds. And so when I left and he left, he was walking down the hall at East End Management in Hollywood. It's in the Valley now. And coming the other direction down the hall was Tom Petty, and he was smoking a cigarette. Tom said, holy crap, Harlan, you look fantastic. That's my Tom Petty. Thank you. I'm here all week.
That's right.
And he goes, I'm fat. Nobody likes a fat rocker. And I'm going on tour in 4 months. And Harlan said, call Tony Horton. And I write about it in my book. So Harlan gives Tom my number. Didn't know he was going to do that. And my roommate picks it up, my roommate Bob, and hey, it's Tom Petty. I'm looking for Tony Horton. So Bob would go, dude, there's somebody effing around downstairs. We had some friends that were practical jokers downstairs. I go, hang up. It's not click, Phone rings again. It's Tom Petty. I think we got disconnected. Bob goes, I think this is the guy. I think it's the real guy. So I get on the phone, and it's him, and he tells me his whole story, and I show up at his house the next day, and gold and platinum records on the wall, and there's not a piece of fitness equipment in there, but he had a little space. So we had a short conversation. I got him a treadmill, and I got him a stationary bike. I got him a heavy bag. I got him a bench, some dumbbells, and a mat, to get down on the floor and do some stuff with. And I worked with him for 4 months. And he couldn't do anything initially. I mean, I put some 12-pounders in his hands on the bench, and his arms just went, "Durr," like, oh my God, I thought I was going to dislocate his shoulder. And then at the end, he's benching 45s on the old life cycle. I don't know if you remember those from the olden days, at the turn of the century. He couldn't do level 1, so I just turned it off, and it was like there was no tension. Yeah, that's better, and he lasted about a minute and a half.
It's probably.
But I had him on there for level 6. At the end, he was hitting the heavy bag and loving it, and he got ripped. And he went off on tour, cutting off his sleeves to his shirts, wearing vests without shirts, like just completely, striated and vascular. And everybody was like, what? And his voice was better. His stamina was better. You know what I mean? His encores were longer, which pissed off the rest of the band. And I was on tour with him for the Long Island, New York City, New Jersey part of the tour, about halfway through the tour. And then after the tour was over, I went about my life, doing whatever. And then Billy Idol called, and then Annie Lennox called, and then Bruce Springsteen called, and then Sean Connery called, and then Shirley MacLaine and Allison Janney and Octavia Spencer and Bryce Dallas Howard. And just about everybody. So I had, at one point when they were all in town, I had Billy Idol first. Then I would train Billy, Annie Lennox, Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, and I'd finish either at Stevie Nicks' house or Stephen Stills' place.
That actually seems, when you think about the lifestyle of a rocker, basically, it's on the road, but people don't realize they actually pretty much have to be in pretty good shape.
They have to be,
right,
and they're supposed to be, and their management wants them to be. But if you're a rocker and you've been around a while, your lifestyle is pretty horrible. You kind of get by on smoke and mirrors. You know what I mean? Quite often. And Tom didn't want to do that on this tour because he wasn't a kid anymore. And Bruce always, that was it. I mean, I showed up with Bruce and he was fit, and I just turned him on to some different things that he hadn't done before, which was fun to do. But Stephen Stills, I couldn't help Stephen. He was just not interested. You know what I mean? But I would go there and go through the motions and whatever. But yeah, it was, there was a lot at stake. And, they can pay anybody to do anything. And I think the reason why they liked me and they hung around is because I was just a normal dude. I had a sense of humor, and I didn't make it life and death, and I wasn't a drill sergeant. I wasn't super, myopic about it. I said, hey, let's hit the heavy bag today. Let's go for a hike today. Hey, we're going to lift today. Let's work on our core. And they liked the fact that, and that's what P90X became in the end. It just became all that variety. And I did that for myself because I know that the reason why most people can't stick with exercise or health or fitness or nutrition, it's boredom, injuries, and the lack of results over time, AKA plateauing. And so I tried to do everything I could to avoid all three of those things. And, 99% of the time I got lucky and everybody had success, and I just kept on keeping on,
So P90X actually came out of, it was just a product just for yourself, and then how did it catch on? What was the?
Well, I was practicing P90X like training techniques. Like I did the martial arts, and I would go to the track and run on the track, and I would go to World Gym and beg, borrow, and steal from Lou Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd like, okay, let's see, 75 sets of chest seems like a lot, but all right, just whatever was interesting to me, whatever was new to me, I was an open book, which is the antithesis of who I was as a kid. If I wasn't good at tennis right away, I'd quit. If I wasn't good at anything, I would quit. And I realized, there's multiple steps, and you're going to fall on your face, and that's how you learn, and you keep going. And so that was what I brought to P90X. We created something called Power 90 prior to that, which was basically P90X Lite. And really the fact that we decided to make Power 90 harder and add more stuff was a crapshoot. Really, it was really an experiment that we didn't really even think was going to work. And initially, it didn't. I mean, just because people would flip channels and go, "Oh my God, that thing's a monster," you know what I mean? But most people, eventually would go, "That's not just some gimmick. That's the real thing." And that's why that took off.
And I know recently, right? We were talking earlier about the power of 4, and I love that. I actually try to implement that when you talk about fitness. Just going to the specifics of it. I guess fitness is specific workouts, right? And then supplements, what herbs and vitamins you take, right? I'm just thinking about it in my mind. Nutrition is making sure the food that you take in is nutritious. It's the right type of food.
Well,
right?
it's fueling and it's healing.
Right.
It's giving you the energy to be able to do what you're asking your body to do, and it's also helping your body recover from what it just did. And that's where the nutrition and the supplementation things come in. All right. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I'm exercising now. I never had before. Supplements are stupid. I don't need them, and I can eat whatever I want now. Which, there's not a smart high school, collegiate, Olympic, or professional athlete that isn't tuned into their diet. The ones that are successful long term, like the youngsters that are, they're just rock stars. They have been in high school and college, and they move on to the pros, and some of them have short-lived, time in the pros, and some of them go on like LeBron or Kobe or Kareem or others that just figured it out and did everything right, and they're in the Hall of Fame, and other guys are broke.
I know you mentioned about LeBron. I read recently, I think he spends over $1 million on his body. I guess the whole lifestyle. It's a lifestyle and choices that that you make. Right.
Yeah. Because, as a 64-year-old, I see a lot of my peers, a lot of people that I went to high school and college with, and I go, oh, damn, what's happening to you? You know what I mean? They sound like this when they talk now. It's like it's hard. It starts in your brain. I mean, exercise is really as much or more for your mental and emotional state as is your physical. And diet and nutrition, I mean, that's the fuel that feeds and heals, right? That's about long-term health. That's about preserving your organs and tendons and joints and digestive system and et cetera, et cetera. That's what goes in your gob, right? And then the exercise part, for too many people, it's too much about aesthetics. I mean, I know you're a 15-year-old wants to bodybuild, but eventually when he gets older and he has a wife and kids, he might not be doing that so much because his shoulders are going to get blown out or his knees are going to get screwed up or his back's going to get screwed up. I mean, wanting to be big in your 30s, 40s, and 50s is like, what do you want, like on a senior rugby team? No, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's really about speed. Like, old people don't move quickly. So what do you got to do to improve get in a track and run, do some martial arts where there's a lot of twisting and torquing and punching and down strikes and sprawls and just, animal flow. Something like that is really becoming popular now. Harder for older folks because they've never done it. That's important. And speed's one, balance is another, and flexibility is another one. And those are the three that get most ignored, even for super fit people as they get older. But once you figure that out, then you can be 64 and do whatever you want, man.
And I know, so right now, I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 10 years, and I was having a conversation that me, let's say as a brown belt, and then someone who's 20 years younger, the only thing, to your point, I'm always thinking about efficiency. You want to move efficiently and energy preservation. So you want to be like super, right, agile and efficient.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Right.
And that takes more time, more effort, more willpower, better work ethic. Just depends on, how much time you want to spend in the gym more than everybody else. I mean, you can't use party as a verb as much. You know what I mean? It's just, you can't cheat. You can't drink, you can't get drunk. There's a lot of things that we like to do. There's a lot of short-term fun that leads to long-term problems. And there's a lot of exercise and nutritional things that you can do that once you figure it out will lead to a lifetime. You know what I mean? Because as I'm not going to be retiring in a year or two. I don't know. I kind of love what I do. But I want to make sure that when I do have more free time, I can charge as hard in my 60s, 70s, and hopefully my 80s. I don't know. I'm a bit of an anomaly now. I mean, I hope to be an even greater one when I'm 20 years from now. We'll see.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Common Denominator podcast. My guest this week is fitness guru Tony Horton, who's offering masterful strategies on helping you get in fantastic shape. Next week, there are incredible stories and there are incredible stories. I'll chat with Rainer Schimpf, a wildlife photographer who was attacked by a 15-ton whale, ended up in the whale's mouth, and lived to tell about it. It's one of the most amazing stories you've ever heard, and we've got it for you next week. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the show. And I know nowadays mindfulness, that's your fourth prong in the Power of Four, it's becoming super popular. It seems like an abstract idea. How would you define that idea of mindfulness?
Well, it's funny because Phil Jackson, who was a coach for the Lakers, he was having those guys do that in the 80s. You know what I mean? Mindfulness is walking your dog. Mindfulness is cranking up the tunes. Mindfulness is not necessarily meditation and sitting on a pillow and doing lotus in the dark with a candle in front of you. It can be it can be, I always tell people, what are your 10 mindfulness practices? Maybe it's going for a walk. And people never do that. Like, go outside and take some deep breaths. It can really be. It's typically mindfulness is anything that takes you off all the stressful things in your life, all the work things in your life, all the things that are complicated and hard to figure out in your life. And for me, like, I don't feel like breath work right now, so I'm going to put on Zeppelin and I'm going to crank it up. You know what I mean? And that just helps me relax. And I love the memories that comes with that music and stuff like that. But I got sick in 2017. I got Ramsay Hunt syndrome, which is the same thing that I think Justin Bieber is now suffering from again.
Yeah.
He had it pretty bad early on. It's just shingles in your ear. And when you get shingles in your right ear, it fries all the nerves in your brain. So it affects your sight, your smell, your taste, and your balance. And those are things that you need so that you can go have a life. But when they're all fried, all you do is sleep all day, barely eat, and vomit most of the time. And that went on for me for the first 3 months were hell. I go, oh, is this hell? Okay, this is hell. I get it. I'm going to try to behave better so I don't have to ever feel this again. You know what I mean? And then after the 3 months, I can walk on the treadmill for 3 minutes and then I have to sit down for an hour and a half, or I can go into the gym and maybe do some push-up. I mean, it was a year. And then to this day, think about it, October 2017, here it is, March of 2023, I still deal with the vestibular stuff based on sleep, based on hydration or lack thereof, based on the stress that I'm dealing with, based on the light in the room. I can walk into a casino in Las Vegas, and all the bling and the bang and the boom will activate the vestibular stuff, which is basically balance. So instead of vertigo, which is this, vestibular stuff, it feels like that inside your head. So when you turn your eyes to look at something, your brain goes, hold on, I'm not there yet. And then you go back this way, especially at a stop sign. Wow. Early on. It was brutal. And so the mindfulness thing, I read John Kabat-Zinn's book, Full Catastrophe Living, big old thick monster. Just taught me how to chill, man, a little bit.
Right. I guess after that, right, changes perspective, right? And you're working and seeing. I know you also wrote a book, The Big Picture. What would you say is the top key takeaways from your book?
Well, the first chapter is do your best to forget the rest, right? And so, and I've patented and trademarked and own that statement. So don't try to use it, man, or I'll take you to court. But it came from Don and Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. And one of them was do your best. What is your best on any given day? And it changes from day to day, depending on your sleep or hydration or biorhythms or the weather or whatever stress is going on in your marriage or with your kids. There's, your best changes, but what is it you can do under the present conditions so that you can at least advance your lifestyle forward a little bit? And I think, part of that chapter when I read that book was too often that too many of us are focusing on all the wrong things. We're focusing on the rest. We're focusing on the obstacles. We're focusing on the problems. We're not focusing on the solutions and moving forward and asking the right questions, right? So that's huge. And then of course there's purpose, plan, and accountability. Like, why do you want to do this? Like, why are you going to the gym? Why are you, and whatever it is, maybe it's for aesthetic reasons. Maybe it's for your ego. But if you enjoy that, if you've got a huge ego, and you want to have big arms and a chest because you think you're going to get laid because of that, well then, okay, I'm not going to stop you. But is that how it's going to be kind of forever? Because time keeps on ticking. And as it ticks, can you adjust? Can you alter? Can you transform into something else so that you're still exercising and you're still eating right? You're still following your mindfulness practice? Because this is, it feels like a long journey, but as a 64-year-old, holy crap. Those are important. And then a plan. What are you doing and when are you doing it? You know what I mean? Like, what time to get up in the morning, what time to eat, what time to go to work, what time to get in traffic so you can get to work on time, what time you go to bed so you get enough sleep. These are all things that you automatically do so that you can survive on Earth and not end up, in the street. But most people are surviving just by doing the basics. But once you kind of figure out the next level, then you can start to thrive, right? Thriving comes from knowing that how you treat your body, what you put inside of your body gives you the energy and enthusiasm to live a much more productive, interesting, adventurous life, right? And so that's what the plan is. And then accountability comes with your company. Who are your 5 best friends? Whatever they're doing, if they're kicking ass and taking names, and you're all about that, then that's who you'll be. But if your friends are a bunch of wannabes and finger pointers and complainers and whiners, welcome to their club.
Yeah, they always say that, right? You become a product of your surroundings. And I was thinking also, you talk about making a plan, like writing things down, like goal setting. I find that to be, for some reason, super hard for many people. Just I always talk about like make it like pen to paper, and you just write down, whether it's business things you want to do or fitness things you want to do or nutrition or diet, pen to paper. But I do find for some reason it's hard for people to hold themselves accountable. I know there are certain times I wouldn't want to be held accountable on certain things, but I guess it's the work of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right?
Exactly right. I think I write about it in my book is learning how to reverse engineer something. You know what I mean? And so to do that, you have to do a little bit of research. Like, okay, I want to climb Kilimanjaro in Africa. I'm not a climber. I'm not that fit, but this sounds interesting. You know what I mean? So, you Google, you call, you email, you check in, you see some documentaries, you try to get on the horn, you do a podcast with somebody who's been there and done that. And, you learn a thing or two, and then you kind of see yourself on the top, and then you see yourself the day before, and then you see yourself at the bottom, meeting with your friends, whatever, and then you see your hotel. These are all different kind of things. And that's like with me, before I even do a single exercise, in my mind, I already see myself doing it, and I know how many repetitions I'm going to do, as opposed to making it arbitrary. You know what I mean? Like, because if you wing it, it's not going to work. It's just if you wing it, the odds are very, very slim that you're going to go very far. And when it comes to anything, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, when it comes to family, finances, all those different aspects of your life. And you have to also know that it is, there's no short-term easy answers for any of this stuff, right? Anything worth achieving is worth working for, worth spending some time doing, worth spending quality time. The journey is always so much more interesting than the destination. Like when you tell a story, the story is about the journey. It's not about the final thing. And then I became a billionaire. You know what I mean? Like, okay, you must have done something between I'm broke and that. There must be some journey there that you stuck with. You know what I mean? And a lot of it is, again, we're back to the company that you keep. I'm not a big goal setter, but you know what I mean? I never did a what do they call those boards where you put up a bunch of pictures and all that? I just seemed a little bit not my thing, I just kept putting myself in situations where I knew I would be uncomfortable, but I would do it anyway. You know what I mean? And then I would learn something from that. And I would say, okay, how can I apply this to my life? Because there's a lot of things that people are doing that are not adding to their life. So at some point you have to figure out that the more you get rid of that stuff, the bad friends, the bad behavior, the poor sleep, the hangovers, you have the shit job that you hate, but you're not doing a hobby that you love. Like once you kind of clear that up, then goal setting is easier. But you can't set goals and you can't have affirmations if your life is a cluttery mess. You know what I mean? Yeah. Those two can't go hand. So you got to clean house first, and then you can begin to set goals because you'll have the energy to do it because you're not spending your energy over here.
And I also enjoy that you said like reverse engineering. I constantly think about that. You think about the end conclusion and you work backwards, and you have to play the movie before it happens. Like you have to see it in your mind clear and have that clarity, how step by step, the logistics of it, and then you do it. You can't just be all
and you do it, but it might not go anything like you thought it was. Right. It might just go south, and then then you could spend a whole lot of time judging it, which doesn't take anywhere. You know what I mean? Or you just cut out the judging and you write down, okay, don't want to do that twice. Don't want to do that 3 times. So where else do I go? What's the other fork in the road going to take me to, So, yeah.
What would you say, I know a lot of people, they always say, people start fitness programs and sign up for gyms and New Year's, and people drop out. What would you say is the number one thing that people keep in mind, just so we give a key nugget for the audience, to stick with what they've decided to do as far as their fitness regime? Because most people do drop out in actuality.
There's a couple things. One, it's hard to make that a priority when everything else is sort of filling up your life. But for that to work, it has to go to the top of the list. It has to seriously be the number 1, 2, or 3 thing that you're going after. That just means the odds will go up. The other one is people have very high expectations based on doing just one type of fitness and expecting tremendous results in a short period of time. That's probably as high as the prioritization of whatever they're doing. And then the third one is that they need good company. They just don't have, like when my mother tried to quit smoking 2 times on her own, didn't work. But when she and a friend finally sat down at lunch one day and said, they were both smoking, and we got to cut this out. We both know it. They came up with that on their own right there, having a Reuben sandwich. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they both quit. You know what I mean? So you are the company you keep there as much as anything. Also having expectations. I mean, Power 90, P90X, they were all P90X3, P90X2. They were all 90 days. And for a lot of people, I would say for some of you, it's going to be 120 days. But on day 60, you better start thinking about day 304, 507, 10,006. Like this has to kind of become who you are, because there's nothing worse than being at the mountaintop and going, yay, taking those after pictures and going, look at me and I'm fabulous. And then people haven't seen you in 6 months and then you're fat again. And you're miserable again because you know what you did and you had that work ethic and you made that plan and you surrounded yourself with the right kind of people and you prioritized and you gave yourself lots of variety in the fitness. And then your girlfriend broke up with you and you got sad. And so you started eating, Malamars and drinking Diet Coke. You know what I mean? Just because, hey, man, bad things happen to good people. Every time something horrible, tough happens to me, I clean things up even more. I have even more discipline because that's going to help accelerate the healing process and help me, help my brain function better while I'm going through this tough time. But then people go on an operation and they eat comfort food for 3 weeks. You're like, really? Maybe you should eat something with more fiber and less sugar and something that's going to feed the digestive system, which is connected to the rest of your organs, which is connected to the inflammation that's happening in places where you don't want it. Because you're just like, oh, I've got an operation. I'm wearing, I got a cane and it's tough, and I'm going to just eat like shit now.
Kind of on that note, it's like every time I go to the hospital and I see the type of food, talk about nutrition, type of food they serve the patients, I'm like, no way, it's crazy.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Nothing like a Fluffernut sandwich and some Jello for lunch after you're out of the ICU. I mean, good grief.
Terrible.
I don't know. But they're changing. A lot of hospitals are finally, in the 21st century, starting to figure that out.
Hopefully. So what's something that comes to the top of your mind that you're grateful for?
I'm grateful for my wife, man. I mean, I got married at 55. I thought I'd be single for the rest of my life. I like being alone. I'm a loner. I never leave the house. I'm like Hugh Hefner, not Hugh Hefner. I'm sorry. Wrong guy.
Yeah, it could be. Who knows?
Yeah. Who was the guy that was a recluse, was a billionaire?
Oh, that's Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes. Yeah. Hugh Hefner, Howard Hughes, not even close. Yeah, and so I've been to 63 military bases around the world. When I was in the peak of working for Beachbody, I was gone half the year. I mean, I traveled a lot, and I don't mind it. I didn't like it early on. But I just like hunkering down with my gal and watching a movie and chilling out. And we laugh a lot. She's very, very funny. And sometimes she thinks I'm funny, which is important as well. And I'm really appreciative of her and my 3 dogs. And I'm not gonna lie to you, my lifestyle doesn't suck, Yeah. It's P90X, I was 46. And Power 90 prior to that got me out of my apartment that I lived in for 21 and a half years, which was nice. But I was in a nice house in Santa Monica, California, and I had no furniture because I couldn't afford it in my big house. And that took some time. Then P90X happened, and, it's just fun. Wherever I am, if I'm in Jackson Hole or I'm in Tokyo or I'm in Mexico City or wherever I am, people will tap me on the shoulder and say, dude, you're not even going to believe who I was and who I am now because of something that you created. That's up there too. That's way, way up there.
I love that. And what's something about you that people don't know?
I have anger issues. Yeah. A little bit still. But that's why I got Ramsay Hunt syndrome. That's why I got sick. My father was a tank commander. I don't know if you ever saw the movie, The Great, God, I'm trying to think of the actor. The Great Lebowski. No, it was The Great Santini.
Oh, Great Santini.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my old man. You know what I mean? You add some alcohol to that guy. And that was it. Like my grandfather was a son of a bitch, and my father was a milder version of a son of a bitch. But I think what I get from that, I get a little moxie. I get a little, you know what I mean? I'm not afraid to ask questions and, you know, and work hard and train hard. But yeah, that's something. And the mindfulness thing is super helpful for me. You know, going on the walks, hanging out with my dog, playing music, and just doing, you know, box breathing. In 4, hold 4, out 4. You know, and
we know a lot about the box breathing. We know a lot.
That?
We had a video of the box breathing that went viral, like 5 million views. We were talking about the box breathing. So I'm just making a shout out to my good friend Dave Azer on that box breathing. So we know about that.
I mean, the Navy SEALs have been doing it forever. And, you know, I mean, this book, think about it. It's back here.
That's right.
Box breathing is about that much of the book. You know what I mean? And then there's there's a lot. And I try to, you know, I'm a crisis meditator, apparently, according to a friend of mine who's really good at it. So like when the shit's hitting the fan, and it takes me 10 minutes to kind of go, oh, okay, I don't need to think those thoughts and deal with that and be mean to people on the phone. You know what I mean? So I'm still a work in progress, man, in a lot of ways.
I think we all are. So,
but I'm better than I used to be.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. And
Moshe, my pleasure, man. Great questions, different. I appreciate that. Instead of answering the same old 10 questions.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Definitely want to give from a different place. And how could people find out more about you and your fitness programs?
The list is TonyHortonLife.com. That's my website. You can find just about everything there. Whatever retreats I'm going on or having. I have an annual ski retreat. Just had it this past February. And of course, the supplements are important to me. MyPowerLife.com. PowerNationFitness.com. If you've done P90X and you loved it and you want something new, and instead of 12 workouts, you want like 40, I think you'll like Power Nation, the Power of 4. It's pretty cool. And then I'm on Tonal. If you got a Tonal, I know your son's doing it, and he might be doing one of my routines. It's fun. We're going to be shooting another one next month, so that's going to keep on keeping on. But TonyHortonLife.com is the best way to find almost anything I'm doing.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. It's really been a pleasure.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tony Horton. Next week, I'll chat with Rainer Schimpf. Rainer is a wildlife photographer who was attacked by a 15-ton whale back in 2019. Ended up in the whale's mouth and lived to tell about it. It's one of the most amazing stories you've ever heard, and we've got it for you next week. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode, and follow me on social media at @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.